This is the Romanian grooming gang who ran a brothel and subjected 10 vulnerable Scottish women to sex attacks after plying them with crack cocaine and booze. They were jailed for a total of 68 years. And a grooming gang victim was told how she was trafficked to Scotland and raped by numerous men when she was a vulnerable teen. Fiona Goddard was initially preyed upon in her hometown of Bradford in West Yorkshire from the age of 13. But now the 32-year-old has revealed her ordeal includes being forced to have sex with men in Scotland after being ordered to deliver drugs to Glasgow and Edinburgh. And it's evidence like this that has prompted the Scottish Conservatives to demand a public inquiry into grooming gangs.
Well, I know that there are victims who are making representation to the government. I've spoken with some of those victims and they're determined that John Swinney should listen to them directly. That's why I raised the issue of grooming gangs at First Minister's Questions just a few weeks ago, because it's evident there's a growing amount of evidence that grooming gangs were prevalent in Scotland. Not only were vulnerable children being abused in Scotland on an industrial scale, plied with drugs, plied with alcohol, subject to the most horrific sexual abuse by multiple men and groups of men. There was also a phenomenon of girls getting trafficked across the border into Scotland. Now we know also that police forces elsewhere in the UK were very much aware of this trafficking of children for the purpose of sexual exploitation. But do we know whether that information was shared with Police Scotland? And if it was, then what was done about it? And all of these questions would form part of a legitimate public inquiry.
But so far, First Minister John Swinney has refused to launch an inquiry into grooming gangs, despite the growing amount of evidence, while child protection charity, the SNP, are calling for ministerial leadership in tackling child sex abuse. And today the Scottish Conservatives asked an urgent question at Holyrood in light of those comments.
The report that has been put forward by the Scottish Government does not mention grooming gangs once. The Government does not know what it's doing. But the Minister will be aware of the inquiry taking place in England. The sheer scale of offending uncovered has led to the grooming gang inquiry collapse. The task force made over 1,000 arrests in its first year, and survivors have even said they were taken across the border to be exploited right here in Scotland. So it is impossible for anyone in the Scottish Government to argue that Scotland is immune when the scale down south is that large. So far, the Scottish Government have rejected calls from victims to hold an inquiry, but the SNP have been clear. Scotland still lacks a clear understanding of the scale and nature of child abuse. Victims deserve better than this, Minister. So will the Minister take this opportunity to finally agree to our calls for a grooming gangs inquiry to be established in Scotland, so we can uncover the true scale of child abuse that has occurred across the country and provide victims with justice and closure?
We're not closed off to a grooming gang inquiry. I have said that we want to ensure that that is where resources need to be diverted. I am confident that we need to build a clearer picture in Scotland of the nature of such group-based activity. But I met with Police Scotland representatives just last night alongside the First Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Education and the Cabinet Secretary for Justice to receive a progress update on the work that is ongoing. And I am confident that we are building that picture, both with the work that Police Scotland are undertaking and the further work just agreed today by the national group. And I think that speaks to exactly what Megan Gallagher is calling for in ensuring that we have a clear picture of the scale of this in Scotland.
While Scottish Labour are calling for an inquiry into grooming gangs, while the Scottish Conservatives raised a question here at Parliament today on that very issue. The big question now is what action the Scottish Government will take next.